Captain Eleanor Reed stood at the bridge of the U.S. Nemesis, her eyes fixed on the massive display screen. The stars looked different from this side of human space. Colder, more hostile. She brushed a strand of gray hair from her face and squared her shoulders. "Betty, show me the Earth defense grid again," she ordered. The ship's AI brought up a holographic display. Where there should have been thousands of green dots showing Earth's defensive platforms, there were only red markers. The Dominion had taken everything in less than a week. "Captain," First Officer Jack Thompson called from his station. "I found something strange in these fortress patterns." Reed walked over to his console, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The Nemesis was humanity's newest and most advanced battleship, but it was also their last. The ship carried experimental weapons that the Earth engineers had barely finished testing before the invasion began. "Look here," Thompson pointed at the screen. "The Dominion builds their fortresses in clusters of 3, but there's always a weak spot between them. It's like they can't help following the same pattern every time." Reed leaned closer. After 20 years in space, she'd learned to trust Thompson's instincts. The man had a gift for seeing things others missed. "Betty, can you confirm this?" she asked. The AI's calm voice filled the bridge. "Affirmative, Captain. Analysis shows a 97% consistency in Dominion fortress placement. Their defensive grid has predictable gaps every 3.2 light years." The bridge crew looked at each other. They all knew what this meant. The Nemesis carried enough firepower to destroy a fortress, but they had assumed they could never get close enough to use it. "If there were real gaps in the defense network, how many crew do we have on board?" Reed asked. 1,500 personnel, Captain," Betty replied. "All departments report ready status." Reed walked back to her command chair and pressed the ship-wide communication button. "This is your captain speaking. As you all know, Earth fell 3 days ago. We are now all that's left of humanity's naval power, but we just found something interesting about our enemy." She paused, looking at the determined faces of her bridge crew. "The Dominion thinks they've won. They think humans are finished. But they don't know about the Nemesis. They don't know what we can do. And they certainly don't know about the gaps in their own defense system." Lieutenant Tom Foster spoke up from the weapons station. "Captain, the new plasma cannons are charged. Shield penetration systems are online. Engineering reports all systems green." Chief Engineer Rachel Brooks added through the comm. "The experimental drives are running perfectly." Reed smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Betty, plot a course for the nearest Dominion fortress cluster. Use the gaps Thompson found." "Course plotted, Captain. Time to target, 6 hours at maximum stealth speed." "Jack," Reed turned to her first officer. "Get some rest. When we arrive, I want you to double-check every calculation. We only get one shot at this." Thompson nodded and left the bridge. The rest of the crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing for what would be either their first victory or their last fight. Reed sat in her command chair, watching the stars streak by on the main screen. The Nemesis was about to show the Dominion why humans never surrendered, why Earth's fall wasn't the end, but just the beginning. "Betty," she said quietly, "send all tactical data to my personal screen. I want to review everything we have on Dominion fortress defenses." As information filled her screen, Reed felt a cold determination settle over her. The Dominion had taken Earth, killed billions, and thought they'd won. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Deep in the ship's hull, the experimental weapons hummed with power. The Nemesis slipped through space like a shark through dark water, heading for its first target. Humanity's last battleship was on the hunt, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war for Earth's survival was about to enter a new phase, and Captain Eleanor Reed intended to write it in fire across the stars. Lieutenant Tom Foster hadn't slept in 2 days. He stared at the weapon testing results on his screen until the numbers blurred together. But he couldn't stop now. He was close to something important. "Betty," "Run the shield penetration test again," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The ship's AI responded immediately. "Test running. Shield penetration at 47%. Previous attempt was 43%. Foster sat up straight. This was it, the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. He grabbed his tablet and ran to engineering, nearly bumping into 2 crew members on the way. Chief Engineer Rachel Brooks was already elbow-deep in the main gun's control systems when Foster burst in. "Rachel, I've got it. We can break their shields." Brooks pulled herself out from under the console, her face streaked with grease. "Show me." Foster handed her the tablet. "If we change the plasma cannon's frequency every 3 seconds while firing, their shields can't adapt fast enough. Each shot hits a little harder than the last." Brooks studied the numbers, her eyes widening. "This could work, but we'll need to modify the main guns. Betty, can the power system handle these changes?" "Affirmative," Betty replied, "though it will require a 15% reduction in shield power during firing." Captain Reed's voice came through the intercom. "Foster, Brooks, get up to the bridge. We found something." When they arrived, First Officer Thompson was pointing at a small outpost on the main screen. "It's perfect for a test run," he said. "Minimal defenses, standard Dominion shields. If Foster's new weapon works, we can hit them before they even know we're here." Reed nodded. "How long to make the modifications?" 4 hours, Brooks said. "Maybe 3 if we push it." "You have 2, Reed replied. "The longer we stay in one place, the more likely they are to find us." The engineering team worked fast. Foster and Brooks modified the main guns while the rest of the crew prepared for their first real fight. The Nemesis had been running silent since Earth fell, but now it was time to show what it could do. 2 hours later, the target appeared on their screens. "Dominion outpost in range," Weapons Officer Lisa Parker reported. "Their shields are up, but they haven't spotted us." Reed stood from her command chair. "Everyone remember, this is just a test. If it doesn't work, we run. We can't risk the ship until we're sure." She paused. "Foster, are you ready?" Foster's fingers flew over his console. Plasma cannons modified. Frequency shift program loaded. "Betty, start recording all sensor data," Reed ordered. "We'll need to study every detail of what happens next." She took a deep breath. "Fire when ready." The first shot streaked across space, a brilliant blue beam that struck the outpost's shields. As planned, the beam changed frequency 3 times during the strike. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields flickered. "Shield penetration at 51%, Foster shouted. "It's working." "Again," Reed commanded. The second shot hit harder than the first. The outpost's shields flared bright orange, then collapsed completely. The third shot cut through the station's hull like it was paper. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the outpost broke apart and exploded. "Time from first shot to destruction. 7.3 seconds, Betty announced. Brooks whistled. "That's a Type 1 fortress wall we just breached. The same kind they use in their main fortresses." Reed smiled grimly. "Send all the data to my ready room. I want to know exactly what happened and how we can make it work even better next time." An alert flashed on Thompson's screen. "Captain, I'm picking up Dominion communications. They've put a bounty on us already. 5 systems worth of resources for any information about this ship." "Good," Reed said. "Let them worry. Let them wonder what's coming for them." She turned to her crew. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning our first real attack." As the bridge crew changed shifts, Foster looked at the debris field where the outpost had been. The Dominion had thought their fortresses were unbeatable. Now the Nemesis had the key to destroying them all. In her ready room, Reed studied the weapon test results. The Nemesis wasn't just a survivor anymore. It was a hunter. And somewhere out there, in their supposedly safe fortresses, the Dominion leaders had no idea what was coming. The real war was about to begin. Strategic Officer David Hayes hadn't left his station for 18 hours. His eyes were fixed on the massive star map in front of him, watching as he connected dots between Dominion fortresses. "There," he said, marking another point. "Betty, confirm this pattern." "Pattern confirmed," the AI responded. 3 major fortresses form an equilateral triangle. Each triangle connects to others in a repeating pattern. Captain Reed leaned over his shoulder. "Show me." Hayes touched his screen, and the map lit up with glowing lines. "Look here, Captain. Their fortresses aren't just placed randomly. They're set up like a giant web. But knowing the pattern means we can predict where every fortress is," Reed finished, "even the ones we haven't found yet." Word spread quickly through the ship. The crew gathered around screens, watching as Hayes' discovery revealed dozens of previously unknown Dominion strongholds. "I've got the weapons ready," Lisa Parker called from her station. She had spent days improving the targeting systems. The new algorithms should let us hit them faster than before. First Officer Thompson walked onto the bridge, holding a datapad. "Captain, we're getting messages from resistance groups. They've heard about our attack on the outpost. They want to help." Reed straightened up. "How many groups?" 7 so far. Small ships, mostly scouts. But they know things about the fortresses. Things that aren't on any maps." Reed nodded slowly. The Nemesis wasn't alone anymore. "Betty, show me the 3 closest fortresses that match Hayes' pattern." The map zoomed in, highlighting 3 massive space stations. Each one was bigger than Earth's old moon. Each one had been built to be unbeatable. "Parker, are the guns ready?" "Yes, Captain. Foster's frequency shifting technology is now fully automatic. We can fire 3 times faster than before." Reed touched her command chair's communication panel. "Engineering. Status report." Chief Engineer Brooks's voice came back clear and confident. "All systems green, Captain. The ship's better than ever." "Then it's time." Reed stood in the center of the bridge. "Hayes, plot a course through all 3 fortresses. Thompson, tell our new friends to stay clear but keep watching. I want to know everything that happens after we hit these targets." The Nemesis moved silently through space. Its black hull absorbed light, making it nearly invisible against the stars. Inside, 1,500 crew members prepared for battle. The first fortress appeared on their screens, huge and threatening. "Weapons ready," Parker reported. "Target locked." "All hands, battle stations," Reed commanded. "Begin attack run." The Nemesis struck like lightning. Its guns fired in perfect sequence, each shot changing frequency faster than the fortress's shields could adapt. The massive station's defenses fell in seconds. "First target destroyed," Betty announced. "Second fortress detecting our presence. They're raising alerts." "No time to hide now," Reed said. "Full speed to the second target. All guns ready." The ship accelerated, its experimental engines pushing it faster than any human vessel had ever gone before. The second fortress barely had time to power up its weapons before the Nemesis tore through its defenses. "2 down," Thompson said. "The third one's bringing up everything they've got. They know we're coming." Reed smiled. "Good. Parker, show them what a prepared human battleship can do." The third fortress launched thousands of fighter ships. Its guns fired massive energy beams across space, but the Nemesis was ready. It danced through the defensive fire like a leaf in the wind, its guns never stopping. When it was over, all 3 fortresses were nothing but floating debris. Time elapsed. 17 minutes, Betty reported. The bridge crew cheered. Even Hayes smiled at his station. "Message coming in from the resistance groups," Thompson said. They're calling us the Fortress Breaker." Reed looked at the tactical display, where 3 more fortress clusters were already marked. "Send word to all our allies," she said. "Tell them to watch the Dominion supply lines. See how they react when they realize their fortresses can't protect them anymore." The Nemesis turned toward its next target, its engines glowing softly in the darkness of space. In less than a day, it had destroyed 3 unbeatable fortresses. The Dominion's great defense network was starting to unravel. And this was just the beginning. Security Chief Robert Mills walked through the quiet halls of the Nemesis, checking every shadow. 3 days ago, he'd found something that worried him. Strange signals coming from inside the ship. "Betty," he whispered, "scan this section again." The AI's voice was equally quiet. Scanning, detecting unusual heat signatures in Maintenance Tube 7. Mills pulled out his scanner and moved closer to the wall. After weeks of destroying fortresses, the Nemesis had become famous or infamous. It was only a matter of time before the Dominion tried to infiltrate them. He pressed his hand against a hidden panel. The wall slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel. Inside, he found what he was looking for, a small device, blinking softly. "Captain Reed," he called through his communicator. "We have a problem." 10 minutes later, the ship's leaders gathered in the secure command room. "It's a Dominion tracking device," Mills explained, pointing to the device on the table. "They've managed to get spies aboard." Navigation specialist Amy Watson spoke up. "That explains the close calls we've been having. Those Dominion patrols shouldn't have been able to track us through the quantum storms." Captain Reed looked at the device, her face hard. "How many?" "At least 3 infiltrators," Mills said. "Maybe more. They're good. They look completely human." First Officer Thompson leaned forward. "We're about to enter deep Dominion space. We can't have spies on board when we do." Reed nodded. "Mills, you have full authority. Find them." The next 12 hours were tense. Mills and his security team checked every crew member, while Amy Watson worked to plot a safe course through the dangerous quantum storms ahead. "The storms might help us," Watson said, showing her calculations to Reed. "The Dominion can't follow us through the worst parts. Their ships aren't strong enough. But we need to be clean before we go in," Mills added. "One signal from a spy, and they'll know exactly where to wait for us." Betty's voice interrupted them. "Security alert in engineering. Unauthorized access detected." Mills and his team ran to engineering. They found Chief Engineer Brooks wrestling with someone in a maintenance uniform. The intruder had a strange device in his hand, reaching for the main power controls. The fight was short. When it was over, they had their first captured Dominion spy. "There's more," the spy said after questioning. "We were sent to stop you from reaching the manufacturing hub." Reed's eyes narrowed. "What manufacturing hub?" Maps and information from the spy revealed something huge. The Dominion's main shipyard and fortress factory, hidden behind the quantum storms. This was where they built their unbeatable fortresses. "If we can destroy that," Thompson said, "we'll cripple their entire defense network." Mills caught the second spy trying to send a warning signal. The third was found trying to sabotage the weapon systems. With the ship finally secure, they prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. "The quantum storms ahead are the worst I've ever seen," Watson reported, showing the swirling clouds of energy on the main screen. "But I found a path through them. It'll be tight." Reed looked at her crew. "This is volunteer only. Once we go in, there's no turning back." Not a single crew member left their post. The Nemesis entered the storms the next day. Lightning-like energy crackled around the ship. The hull groaned under the pressure. Watson's hands flew over her controls, guiding them through gaps between the quantum disturbances that would tear other ships apart. "Energy spike ahead," Thompson called out. "Something big." The storms cleared just enough to show them their target. The manufacturing hub was enormous, a massive space station surrounded by half-built fortresses and defense platforms. "They didn't expect anyone to get through the storms," Reed said softly. "They never built proper defenses here." The Nemesis guns were already charging. They had fought their way across the galaxy for this moment. The heart of the Dominion's power was right in front of them. "All hands," Reed commanded, her voice firm. "Prepare for battle. This time, we're not just destroying a fortress. We're going to tear down their entire empire." The battle for the manufacturing hub was about to begin. And this time, the Dominion had nowhere to hide. Communications Officer Frank Cooper nearly fell out of his chair. "Captain, you need to hear this." The battle for the manufacturing hub had been raging for hours. The Nemesis had destroyed 3 partially built fortresses, but took heavy damage in return. Now Cooper had picked up something unexpected in the Dominion's transmissions. "Play it," Captain Reed ordered, holding onto her chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Strange alien words filled the bridge, but Betty translated them instantly. "Central Command demands immediate response. Where is the primary core? No fortresses function without connection to primary core. Respond." "They keep repeating it," Cooper said excitedly. "They're panicking because something's wrong with their control system." Dr. Grace Wilson arrived on the bridge, her medical uniform stained with blood from treating the wounded. "Captain, we figured out something about their weapons. The crew members hit by their new energy beams, their injuries all show the same pattern, like they're being controlled by something." Reed's eyes widened. "Betty, analyze all Dominion Fortress movements since we started our attacks. Look for signs of central control." The AI worked quickly. Analysis complete. All Dominion fortresses show synchronized defense patterns. They operate as one system, not individual stations. "That's why Hayes found those patterns," First Officer Thompson said. "The fortresses aren't just connected. They're all controlled from one place." Another hit shook the ship violently. "Hull breach on Deck 4, engineering reported. Emergency shields holding." Reed gripped her chair tighter. "Cooper, can you trace those control signals?" "Working on it," he replied, his fingers flying over his console. "The quantum storms are making it difficult. But wait, got it. They're coming from somewhere deep in Dominion space, some kind of central command fortress." "Captain," Dr. Wilson stepped forward. "If they're all controlled from one place, that's why our frequency-shifting weapons work so well. The fortresses can't adapt on their own. They have to wait for orders from their primary core." The Nemesis took another hit, and warning lights flashed across every screen. "Shields at 23%. Weapons Officer Parker shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Reed stood up, despite the ship's violent shaking. "Cooper, send everything you found to my screen. Betty, show me the fastest route to that signal source." "Captain," Thompson warned, "the ship's badly damaged. If we go after their command center now, we might not survive." Reed finished. "But we found their weakness. Everything. All their fortresses, their whole defense network. It all depends on this primary core." She opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. We've discovered something important. The Dominion isn't as strong as they want us to think. They built their entire empire around one central control point. And now we know where it is." The bridge crew looked at each other. They were tired, injured, and their ship was falling apart, but they had found what they were looking for. "Dr. Wilson," Reed turned to the ship's doctor. "Get everyone treated as fast as you can. Cooper, download everything you can about their control signals. Thompson, get me a damage report from every section. We're not done yet." "New contacts," Parker called out. 6 Dominion warships just came through the storm." Reed smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "They're not here to fight us. They're here to protect something. Betty, scan that sector they're guarding." "Large energy signature detected," Betty reported. "Consistent with a control relay station." "That's it," Reed said softly. "That's how they maintain control through the quantum storms. They need relay stations." She straightened up. "Target that station. All remaining power to weapons." The Nemesis guns roared one last time. The relay station exploded, and suddenly all the Dominion ships and fortresses around them started moving erratically, like they'd lost their coordination. "Look," Cooper pointed at his screen. "Their whole network is disrupted. Every fortress within 10 light years just went into emergency mode." Reed watched as the enemy ships scattered in confusion. Without their central control, They couldn't fight effectively. "Plot a course out of here," she ordered. "We need repairs, and I want every crew member ready for what comes next." Her voice hardened. "Because now we know how to bring down their entire empire. We just need to find their primary core and destroy it." The Nemesis limped away from the manufacturing hub, damaged but not defeated. They had lost a battle but discovered something far more valuable: the key to winning the war. The hunt for the primary core was about to begin. Lead engineer Peter Ross worked without sleep for 3 days straight. After their discovery of the primary core's existence, he had an idea that might change everything. "It's ready," he told Captain Reed, pointing to a new device installed in the weapons room. "I call it the Core Tracker. It can detect the control signals that the primary core sends to all their fortresses." The Nemesis had spent 2 weeks hiding in an asteroid field, repairing its battle damage. During that time, something incredible happened. Other ships started joining them. "Captain," First Officer Thompson reported, 3 more resistance ships just arrived. "That makes 12 ships total." Reed watched from the bridge as the small fleet gathered around the Nemesis. Most were civilian ships converted for battle, but their crews were determined. They had all lost homes to the Dominion. "Betty, show me what Ross's Core Tracker has found." A massive hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed hundreds of signal lines, all flowing toward one point in space. "There it is," Ross said proudly. "The primary core. It's hidden behind their ultimate defense line. 20 fortresses in a sphere formation." Reed studied the hologram. "Can we get through?" "Not alone," Thompson answered, "but with our new friends." He gestured to the fleet outside. Reed nodded and opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Reed. You've all heard what we discovered. The Dominion isn't invincible. They built their empire around one central point of control. Destroy that, and their whole network falls apart." She paused, looking at the determined faces on her screen. "We have a way through their defenses, but it will take all of us. Anyone who wants to leave, now is the time." Not a single ship moved away. Ross stepped forward. "Captain, I've modified our targeting system. If we can get close enough, we can send a feedback pulse through their own control signals. It would overload the core from inside." "How close?" Reed asked. "Very close, right into the middle of their defense sphere." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone knew what that meant. They would have to fight through the heaviest defenses in the galaxy. "We'll need a distraction," Thompson said. "The resistance ships can attack from multiple directions, while the fortresses are busy with them. The Nemesis can slip through," Reed finished. She looked at her crew. "This is it. Everything we've done has led to this moment." The next day, they began their approach. The resistance fleet split into 4 groups, attacking the fortress sphere from different angles. The space around the primary core lit up with weapons fire. "Their defense pattern is changing," Parker reported from weapons. "The fortresses are spreading out to fight the resistance ships." "There's our gap," Reed said. "All power to engines. Take us in." The Nemesis accelerated toward the weakened part of the sphere. 3 fortresses turned to stop them, but they were too slow. The ship's guns fired in perfect sequence, clearing a path. "We're inside their defense line," Thompson shouted. "Core dead ahead." Through the main window, they finally saw it. A massive station, bigger than any fortress, glowing with strange energy. This was the heart of the Dominion's power, the control center for their entire empire. "Multiple hits," Parker called out. "Shields failing." Ross ran to his console. Core tracker locked on, ready to send feedback pulse. The ship shuddered as more hits landed. Warning lights flashed everywhere. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Betty announced. "Critical damage to main engines." Reed gripped her chair. "Ross, do it now." Ross slammed his hand down on the activation button. A pulse of energy shot from the Nemesis, following the Dominion's own control signals back to their source. The primary core's glow brightened, then started to flicker. "It's working," Ross yelled. "Their system is overloading." On screens all around them, they watched as fortress after fortress lost power. The mighty Dominion defense network was collapsing. "All ships, full retreat," Reed ordered. "Get clear before." A massive explosion lit up space as the primary core finally overloaded. The Nemesis rode the shockwave out, its engines straining. When the light faded, the core was gone. The surrounding fortresses floated dead in space. The Resistance fleet regrouped around the Nemesis, battered but victorious. "Captain," Cooper called from communications, his voice filled with awe. "I'm getting reports from everywhere. All Dominion fortresses, they're all shutting down. The whole network is falling apart." Reed stood in the center of her bridge, watching the fortress sphere break apart. "Send word to Earth," she said quietly. "Tell them to prepare for company. We're coming home." The final battle was over, but the real work of freeing the galaxy was just beginning. The Nemesis approached Earth slowly, leading a fleet of over 50 ships. 2 months had passed since they destroyed the primary core, and everything had changed. Captain Reed stood at her usual place on the bridge, but this time she was smiling. Through the main window, she could see their home planet growing larger. The Dominion ships that once guarded Earth were gone, their mighty fortresses now nothing but lifeless metal shells. "Message from Earth Command," Communications Officer Cooper announced, his voice breaking with emotion. They say welcome home." First Officer Thompson looked at the scanner readings. No sign of any active Dominion forces in the whole system. "It's really over." The bridge crew watched as Earth grew closer. Many of them had tears in their eyes. When they'd left, they were running for their lives. Now they were returning as heroes. "Betty," Reed called out, "show me the final numbers." The AI displayed the statistics on the main screen. Total Dominion fortresses destroyed or disabled, 1,247. Estimated Dominion ships rendered inoperable, 15,892. Allied planets liberated, 34. Dr. Wilson arrived on the bridge with surprising news. "Captain, remember those injury patterns I found? We finally understand them. The Dominion wasn't just an empire. They were controlling their own people. When we destroyed the primary core, we freed them too." Lead Engineer Ross added to the report. "She's right. We're getting messages from former Dominion worlds. Their people are rebelling against what's left of their leadership. They're asking for our help to build a free society." Reed nodded. The victory was bigger than they'd imagined. They hadn't just defeated an empire. They'd liberated both its victims and its own people. "Multiple ships approaching," Parker announced from weapons, but her tone was cheerful. "It's the Earth Defense Fleet. They're here to escort us home." The Nemesis, scared but proud, flew past Mars with its honor guard of Earth ships. Behind it came the Resistance fleet, ships of all sizes and shapes, crewed by beings from a dozen different worlds. All of them had fought together to end the Dominion's reign. "Captain," Thompson said softly, "look at the readings from the old fortresses." Reed checked her screen. The massive Dominion structures were already being taken apart. Earth engineers were studying them, learning their secrets, making sure nothing like the primary core could ever be built again. "Message from Earth Command," Cooper reported. "They're asking what we want to do with the Nemesis now." Reed looked around at her crew, at Foster, who had cracked the fortress shields, at Brooks, who had kept their engines running through impossible battles, at Mills, who had protected them from infiltrators, at Watson, who had found paths through quantum storms. At all of them. "Tell them the Nemesis isn't done yet," she said. "There are more worlds to free, more people who need help. The Dominion is finished, but our real work is just starting." The crew straightened in their seats. They were tired, yes, but this was what they had fought for. Not just to destroy, but to build something better. "Besides," Reed added with a smile, "somebody needs to make sure nobody ever tries to build another network of unbeatable fortresses." The bridge crew laughed. They had proven that nothing was unbeatable, not when humanity decided to fight back. The Nemesis entered Earth orbit to cheering crowds watching from below. On screens across 1,000 worlds, people celebrated their freedom. Former Dominion soldiers laid down their weapons and joined their freed people in rebuilding. "Captain," Betty announced, "Earth Command has given us our new mission. They want us to lead the peacekeeping fleet, to help build a new alliance between all free worlds." Reed sat in her command chair one more time. "Cooper, send a message to all ships. Tell them the war is over. But the peace will take all of us working together." She looked at the beautiful blue Earth below them, then at the stars that stretched to infinity. The galaxy was entering a new age, one of freedom, cooperation, and hope. "Your orders, Captain?" Thompson asked. Reed smiled. The Nemesis had started its journey as humanity's last battleship. Now it would help lead the way to a better future. "Take us up," she said. "There's still work to do among the stars." The Nemesis rose from Earth orbit, ready for its next mission. Behind it, the galaxy was changing. Ahead lay a future that no one could have imagined when their journey began. The Fortress Killer had become a peacemaker, and that was the greatest victory of all.